this is a circuit breaker, or at the very least, my attempt at drawing one. And within this mechanical contraption lies the key to building true discipline. Now, you're probably wondering, like, what the heck does a circuit breaker have to do with discipline? Well, allow me to explain via a personal story. You see, I used to be somebody who was extremely inconsistent in the things I did, right? Some days I'd be so motivated, right? You know, I'd wake up one day. Imagine this is me right here, right? This guy looking real happy, right? He's got his hands in the air, right? My motivation would be through the roof. And because I was so motivated, I'd try and do all of this work. I'd want to do so much. I'd want to make all of this progress, do all of these things. So that's what I would do, right? I would do, you know, I do a lot of work, right? This is my motivation. This is the amount of work I'm doing as well, right? Very motivated, getting a lot done, so excited. But the problem with that, right? The problem with, you know, attempting to get things done like this is that this motivation would not last. And the second it was gone, so is my work right now. Rather than getting so much done, getting all these things done, checking all these boxes, I'm sitting around, I'm lazing, I'm procrastinating, right? I'm not smiling anymore. I'm actually quite sad. I'll make it in red because I don't feel like switching markers. But yes, basically, I would go from doing so much, so motivated, then to, you know, this span of like 1 to 2 weeks where I wouldn't get anything done at all. Very inconsistent, right? And the problem with this inconsistency is that it's very difficult to make progress when you are being inconsistent, right? So imagine kind of like, what's that guy's name? Sisyphus, right? He's pushing the boulder up the hill, right? Inconsistency. What ends up happening is you're Sisyphus, right? You're trying to push this boulder up the hill, right? And you make a good amount of progress, right? You know, you're really motivated, you're getting that boulder up, but, you know, that motivation doesn't last because you're relying on it. Motivation is very inconsistent. And the second that you're unmotivated, you stop working. Then that ball goes all the way back down the hill, right? Essentially, you reset your progress through this inconsistency. You have to build your momentum again and again. Every time you end up, you know, getting unmotivated again, you lose that motivation, you just stop working, right? Because you essentially burn yourself out. Right. And you know, that's not how you get things done, right? That's ultimately not how you're going to achieve your goals, is by relying on motivation, relying on this inconsistency. And I've actually found a solution to that problem. A very good solution, actually. A solution that most people kind of like to neglect because they just, you know, it's because of this hustle culture. Like, oh, you want to do that? Wow, look at this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And again, that solution lies in our circuit breaker. All right, let's make it a little bit smaller this time. You've got your circuit breaker. And what a circuit breaker does is it breaks the electrical connection, right? It cuts off the power when the load is getting too much, right? Essentially, when there's too much power, when there's too much going on, boom, it'll shut off, and that prevents the system from exploding. It, you know, stops a lot of bad things from happening. Essentially, you want to do that for yourself, right? But, you know, instead of, you know, us cutting off the system, essentially what I'm talking about here is taking rest, right? And not rest, you know, and then, you know, how people like to see it. Rest not meaning that, oh, okay, I'm resting, I'm going to watch anime, I'm going to play some video games, right, laze around. When I say rest, I mean productive rest, as in taking a walk, reading a book, right, taking some time to think or hanging out with friends, that type of thing. And the reason this works is there are actually 3 key reasons as to why this is so effective. The first of those being that sustainable discipline requires balance. Think of, you know, think of it like this, you know, this seesaw, right? Right, where you've got, you know, progress over here, and then rest over here, right? So when your seesaw, say for instance, is tilting too far towards the side of rest, then you just aren't going to get anything done, right? If you're only resting, then nothing is going to be accomplished, right? Or rather than having progress, we'll say it's work. Rest and work. Right, when you're only resting and not working, obviously you're not going to get anything done. You're not going to go anywhere. But let's say you only work rather than rest. If it's the other way, well then, you're just going to burn yourself out, right? Essentially, you're going to work so much that the quality of your work begins to drop, right? You start burning out, you become inconsistent, and then you end up like me getting in that rut of like 1 or 2 weeks where you're just not doing anything. You're doing nothing but lazing around, scrolling on your phone, playing video games, just wasting time. When if you had just taken some rest, you would have essentially recharged yourself, and then your work is good again, right? The quality is high, right? You want to find that balance, right? This middle ground, right? Where you're getting an adequate amount of work and an adequate amount of rest done. And what you find is that when you work like this, you're actually very consistent because you're recharging. And then I have to tackle this misconception that that rest is a weakness. You know, there's hustle culture. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta grind 24 hours every single day. What is sleep? Sleep is for the weak, right? All this like crazy stuff, right? Essentially, resting isn't actually resting. Resting is actually extremely productive. You can even think of resting as work in a way, because when you rest, right, you recharge your work. Like I mentioned this a few times earlier, but resting allows you to recharge your work. Because imagine, okay, you're working for like 4 or 5 hours straight. Well, you get a significant amount done, but as you're doing that, your focus is beginning to drop. You're beginning to stray here and there, right? You essentially need to take a break as to recharge your focus, right? And again, taking a break is not opening up your phone and scrolling on Instagram Reels. It's not going to TikTok. It's not playing video games. It's not watching anime. It's literally just taking the time to let your brain chill. Like you can go outside, you can take a walk and just think. You can go, have a conversation with some friends, right? You could read a book. Essentially, you want to give your brain some type of task where it's not actively doing something, where it's not actively being put to use. And just let it kind of just enter this state of flowing. And what you'll find is that you actually begin to be rejuvenated by taking this rest. And once that rejuvenation hits, it's like getting a second wind. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm knocked out. Boom, I rested. Second wind. It's time to get back into this day. It's time to finish things strong. It's time to check off these boxes and actually win. And lastly, there's the fact that the prevention is better than repair. I'll just put pre-youth because I didn't feel like writing it all the way. But prevention is superior to repair, right? Using myself as an example, right? Repairing is me burning myself out and then having to wait 1 to 2 weeks just to get back into that flow state of working in it, right? I do so much and then essentially my system breaks, right? I didn't break the circuit. I worked all the way up here and then my system exploded and it took me 1 to 2 weeks to repair, right? So repair, 1 to 2 weeks. But rest, on the other hand, it takes a lot. It's a lot shorter, right? Rather than wasting 1 to 2 weeks of just burning out, I can't do it until I catch myself and get back into the flow of things. I take a break 1 to 2 hours. I might hit a workout, I might take a walk, I might read something, right? I might talk to somebody. Whatever the case is, 1 to 2 hours, right? 1 to 2 hours of preventing my system from breaking and burning out. I do this 1 to 2 hours, right? Then I'm back into the flow of things, right? I'm back at work, I'm back being productive, and I'm back to getting things done. Right? It's look at the time comparison. 1 to 2 weeks versus 1 to 2 hours versus 1 to 2 weeks. Obviously, you want to be over here, which is why you want to be taking rest, but productive rest. So now that we've got this down and that it's understood, we need to understand how exactly one can implement rest into their daily life. And there's actually a very simple 2-step process to get this done, right? First step being is that you need to be able to recognize when exactly you're about to overload. We'll just say recognize, right? Firstly, you need to recognize when you're overworking yourself, when you're working too hard, right? So essentially, you need to figure out how long you can maintain a flow state, you can maintain a deep work state without burning out, right? So let's say you're able to work for 2, maybe 3 hours without burning out, without getting tired, without your focus straying. So so that's cool. You've recognized when your burnout threshold is, and once you recognize that, you want to systemize your rest. essentially, you want to block it out in your day, right? So you have your work blocks, right? Basically time blocking, right? You have this portion of your day when you are getting things done, when you're actively working. But then you want to block out a frame of time when you aren't, when you're resting, right? And allowing yourself to recharge, right? For me, I like to work from give or take like 6 to 8, and then from 8 to 9, or maybe 9 to 10, depending on how long I like to work. I like to take a walk, right? I just go outside, put my headphones in, I might listen to a podcast, or I might just think, right? But I'm using that time to essentially recharge, right? And as I'm doing that, I'm able to once that's done, I can get back into my day, I can get back to my working, I can create content, I can work on my business, doing all of these things because I took that time out of my day to rest. And I make sure to get that period of rest every single day. It keeps me productive, it keeps me on my toes, it keeps me efficient, right? You want to recognize how long you can work, right? That's something you have to figure out for yourself. Then you want to systemize that rest period. You want to block it into your day. You want to get that specific time. You want to make sure that you're doing it every single day. And when you do that, when you actually start breaking that circuit, you'll realize that, your productivity, maybe, just like, imagine we're on the graph, right? Like, this is you kind of like when you're not resting. You're like, and you're back down. You're like, and you're back down. You might go stagnant a little bit, and you're back down, right? But when you start resting, when you start implementing that rest, it actually turns into this, this straight linear progression of you just being the GOAT, getting things done. So you need to implement rest. It is by far one of the greatest tactics, the greatest hacks, or whatever you want to call it, in the existence of discipline. So hopefully you found some value in this video. Hopefully you learned something new, and hopefully you realize that resting actually isn't a bad thing. It's actually very effective and very beneficial to your progression towards your goals. So if you like videos like this, you can click this video right here to learn something new. And if you're somebody who values a more guaranteed way of making discipline so easy that it's harder for you not to achieve your goals, click the first link in the description, join my elite community, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.